team teach this next segment. We just want to get everybody on the same plane of weed biology. We haven't rehearsed this, but we're all going to kind of chime in a little bit here. So hopefully the title's a little catchy. It's AKA weed biology. All right. So just to start, we have different types of weeds, different life cycles. We have our perennials that live several years. They usually have some sort of overwintering structure, usually a hardy root or something. Then we have woody plants, of course. Our biennials, the seed germinates in 1 year, and usually there's a rosette of leaves year one. They don't typically get tall, these weeds, but then in year two, in the spring, late spring, they start to bolt and send up a seed head, and they shed their seeds and starts the cycle all over again. Our winter annuals, so those seeds start in the fall, they germinate in the fall, they overwinter, and then in the spring, they go to flower and shed their seeds. Some things like chickweed, they'll be flowering and shedding seed in April. So all these weeds have, a little bit different lifespan. And then our summer annuals, pigweed, lamb's quarters, they're going to germinate in the spring and shed seed in the summertime. So that's, our basic types of life cycles. As you look at those, you want to think about where's the energy going in these plants at the different times of the year. So that root is going to overwinter. It's got to get stored up with some carbohydrates. So there's a point, usually after flowering, where before winter it's going to start storing up some carbohydrates in those roots. And you want to think about that because, as you've been hearing, we have to introduce a disturbance, whether it be tillage or planting or mowing. And we want to introduce those disturbances in the weed life cycle at a critical point. So typically right after flowering, perennials, their roots are low in energy. Here they're going through the winter, and through the winter, the plants are actually alive and using a little bit of energy. So in the spring, there's a slight decrease in the energy storage in the roots because they've used it up. In biennials, they're just storing, think of a burdock root, they're just storing a lot of energy in the root until they send up that seed stalk. And then our winter annuals, basically the same thing. They're storing energy. Going to be easiest to kill when they're small. And then the same with summer annuals. Okay, they don't have large storage structures because it's just a short life cycle and they just want to get some seeds produced. Of course, there's always exceptions in biology. So something like mare's tail or horseweed, it could be a winter annual where it would start growth in September here, and then it's going to overwinter and it's going to shed seed in the summer. And sometimes it'll start growth in the spring and shed seed the same year. So some of our plants are both, spring annuals as well as winter annuals. So some of our typical annual weeds, winter annuals, biennials, perennials. Questions so far? Then of course, they don't all emerge and grow at the same time. So you take something like a downy brome, it's a really problematic weed in small grains. That's a winter annual, actually starts in the fall. We have some of our things that start growth and germinate early in the spring. Even our perennials are going to emerge at different times in the spring. Quackgrass is fairly early. Canada, this was a little bit later. Giant foxtail emerges a little bit earlier than yellow foxtail or green foxtail, and earlier than crabgrass. Okay, so think about when those weeds are emerging, when they're active, when are we planting, when are we doing our field operations, and we're just trying to cause havoc. We're trying to cause chaos. You've all seen the insurance commercial with that guy causing havoc. That's what we want to do with the weeds. And some weeds, they have a nice, concise time of germinating, but some don't. In particular, Palmer amaranth, all water hemp. What makes them so difficult is that they're germinating through the summer. We want to think about growing points. So in a grass, so here's our seed head, and that's where the growing point was. And this tiller that has a growing point all enveloped in those leaves, okay? So if we cut this, if we mow this or cut it, hormones stop going down and stop suppressing that tiller. And once we cut it, that tiller is gonna start growing more. So we wanna think about growing points and rhizomes. They have growing points, little buds. And our broadleaf weeds, at each leaf axil, we have a bud and a growing point. So if a deer comes and grazes a soybean plant and grazes the top off, we're gonna get more growth from these buds. If it comes and grazes it off right below the cotyledons, which I've seen before, that plant's a goner because there's no more growing points on it. Different root structures. So here's plantain. All the buds, all the growing points and buds are right in that crown. Here's some parsnip with storage of energy in the root. Stolones, so rhizomes and stolones technically are stems. We have our ground ivy, quackgrass, and bindweed, field bindweed there. So when you look at this, think about spraying herbicides on that plant, okay? This is a perennial. If we just have a couple leaves popping up over the ground and we spray that with some Banvel or Roundup, is that gonna do much? Because we got a little leaf surface area and a whole huge root here. Russ Hahn always said to let these lines get about 20 inches long so you can get enough herbicide in the plant to actually make it to the root and do something. So again, that goes back to, the life cycle. Is it, what growth stage is it in? Is it in the vegetative stage or in the reproductive stage? So here we have energy storage. These are some culms on some Timothy. So that's where some of the energy is stored. This is a milkweed root, the little buds on the rhizome. And here, John Hollis up in Whitehall knows how much I love burdock, so he dug me up a 2-foot burdock. And if you want some soil health and some compaction and remediation, in my book, I think that's the plan. Seed dormancy and germination. So this gets really complicated, so I'm not going to really say anything about it, other than all these different things that regulate dormancy and germination, cycles of dark and light, cycles of temperature or nutrients and root exudates and moisture. They all regulate those processes, and everything we do also has an impact on those processes. We want to eliminate, reproduction in plants as much as possible, or seed rain. Not doing tillage, doing the right type of tillage to pull up these rhizomes of quackgrass rather than cutting them up, and then preventing runners and that type of thing. Our yellow nutsedge, we have these little nutlets that develop on the roots. They start to develop on June 21st when they start to shorten. And so if we can keep that plant mowed or clipped, those nutlets aren't going to be able to develop. And I just wanted to put in rosettes. So here's, I believe, a shepherd's purse. And I guess what I want to mention here is that sometimes these leaves change with the age of the plant. So if you're identifying the weed, you know, sometimes the leaf shape and size will change. So I want to just relate a little story where a few years ago, a company came and they wanted to develop pennycress as an oilseed crop for biofuel. So I helped them at a farm. We planted about 5 acres of pennycress. It's a winter annual. It ripens early in like May, and we harvested it, and it came out pretty good. The field was a little weedy, and you know, for the first time, I guess it was somewhat respectable. But I'm taking the seed home, and I look, and across the road, there's a perfect field of pennycress. Not a weed in it. It's nice and solid. It was beautiful. And what happened was it was a cornfield, and the farmer didn't have time to plant it, so he sprayed Roundup, and it killed everything but the pennycress. So he sprayed it in the spring, and it killed everything but the pennycress. So why did it not take out the pennycress? Wasn't up yet. Well, it was up. It was up. But we have our vegetative stage and we have our reproductive stage. So when it goes to the reproductive stage, instead of sending nutrients to the roots, where are all the nutrients going? They're going up. So Roundup at that stage of growth in the weed had no effect at all. So, so next, we have some weed examples, and we have just a couple. So maybe you want to do this part? So we just wanted to go through a couple weeds as examples.
Well, yeah. Now I think we could do it like weed exercise together. We made a list of 8 weed species, and they're very, very common and infamous. You probably have seen these weeds on your farm. So we are gonna go through. How much time do we have left? Okay. Okay. So we probably will go through like 5 weed species. Jean-Paul and Thor have talked about a few options of cultural control for weed species, and also Aaron has talked about the weed biology. So here, for each weed species, we listed a few characteristics of this weed. So based on these features, could you please tell everybody, you know, like if you see this weed on your farm, what kind of culture strategies you want to try? If you already have this weed on your farm and you try to control this weed but failed, you know, you're welcome to tell us your story. It's always good to learn some lessons from people. So this is common ragweed. It is a summer annual, emerges in spring, and some people have like allergy from this weed in late summer, and it sets seed in late summer, and the seeds are very, very persistent in soil. So if you see this weed and you did some research to know about this weed, what kind of cultural strategies you would like to try? Sounds great, yes, yeah. So to get rid of when it's young in the springtime, right? And what else you want to try? Yeah, to prevent to prevent seed production, make sure it will not produce so much seed, so many seeds on your farm. Actually, Thor mentioned the time weeder. The time weeder actually will work well with this. Yes.
I would just say with ragweed, it can, because the seed is fairly large, it can germinate from fairly deep. And tine weeder works good on it if you catch it just at the right time, but sometimes you'll tine weed and then you won't have gotten the ragweed because it's so deep down in, so that you can also, if you don't get it just time it just so it also can be kind of difficult to control with a tine weeder. I've had that happen where you have tine weed that kills everything else, and then all of a sudden these ragweeds are coming up from really deep.
Good to know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great point too. And the other concern with this one is to me, I call it an elastic weed. So when you do cultivate it, you don't get it all the way. It has a way of kind of shifting itself a little bit, and then it just retakes, especially if you got any kind of soil moisture there. So making sure that you lift it completely and eradicate it it's tough. Especially when it gets bigger. The bigger that gets, the harder it is to cultivate it out.
Yeah, I think there's some research that, for this area, common ragweed won't emerge after June 1st. So if you're able to delay planting, if you got a late planting, you can fit the field after June 1st, then you're basically controlling all of it before you even plant.
Thank you. I think we did very well for this first one. The next one. Hemp dog ban. Have you seen this one on your farm? Yes. So it's a perennial and a highly toxic to livestock. You don't want your livestock, you don't want your animals to eat it. And the shoots from root buds can emerge deep from soil. And the rootstocks are persistent in soil. So for this weed, when you see these features, what kind of culture strategies you would like to try?
Think about a fat root deep in the soil storing up energy. Then what's going to be lowest in energy?
Right after flowers.
Yeah.
And then after you mow it, what do? You mow it again.
Oh.
And then again.
Yeah.
And then again. So I've been playing around with milkweed in my hay fields, and so last year it flowered. I took a patch, just one patch, not all of them. I just kept cutting it. Every time it gets like 3 leaves, it's going to start sending energy back into the root. Up to the, maybe 3 leaf stage, it's taking energy from them to get there, and then it's going to start sending it back. So you have to be pretty religious about being that chaotic insurance guy causing a lot of disturbance.
Yeah, actually one grower told me, she just kept mowing and she mowed for like 5 years and finally got control of this.
I also sometimes see it in no-till corn. And I've heard from farmers recently that 2,4-D is one of the most effective herbicides on hemp dog bane and is a good fit for most corn growers.
Okay.
Any quick questions about specific weeds? We're going to switch over to Carrie and have her talk about the vulnerabilities. So any other quick questions or?
We'll talk about smart specifically.
Okay, we're going to let Carrie take over here.